Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from Brinkley, South Australia, which is about an hour outside of Adelaide, we have Kym Henley. Kym is the founder of Freedom Hill Sanctuary. Welcome, Kym.
Hello, Fred. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. It's wonderful.
Now, you started in 2011 with one lamb called Lynn, and now you have 150 animals. Can you tell us how you rescued Lynn and how you started Freedom Hill Sanctuary?
For sure. Lynn was our very first rescue lamb. We actually didn't have Freedom Hill at that time, and one of my husband's clients was a sheep farmer and had an orphan lamb and called up and said, I don't suppose your wife would like a lamb. And at the time, I was already vegan, and I said, of course, we would welcome this little lamb into our house. And when we got him, I used to watch him. We fenced off an area. We only had 10 acre property at the time, and we used to watch him in with the dogs, and he would play with the balls with the dogs. He'd run with them. When it would rain, he'd go in the kennel with the dogs, and I thought there's more to these guys than being dumb sheep, and I think that I need to do something about it. So we set a path of selling that property and buying a property of 50 acres to get a friend for Lynn, and we've got 150 friends now. So, yeah, it all started with one little lamb.
Take us back to that moment when your friend called and said, do you want this lamb? What made you say, of course I would?
I actually didn't think that there would be anybody else that would take an orphan lamb and care for it without growing it and fattening it to eat it. And I wanted to save its life, and I knew that if I took it, he would have a safe life with us. Even if we didn't expand and go on to where we have, he still would have grown up with our dogs and been a happy little lamb for all of his life. So it was the desire to save his life that I actually wanted to take him in.
Now, when you look back on that, how does that make you feel?
It's amazing. I still look at Lynn, and Lynn is a very stubborn little boy. He hates having his photos taken. So he's 10 now, and celebrated his his 10th birthday on the 1st of July. And he's a stubborn boy. He's the leader of all the come into the property, and he shows them the ropes and everything. But if I had to do it again, I'd do it a zillion times. I've done it 150 times or more. So it's a warming feeling for sure that you can save a life of a farm animal, which is normally not put in the realms of animal welfare like your cats and dogs.
How did you start Freedom Hill as far as you bought 50 acres outside of Adelaide and you moved there to get Lynn a friend?
Yes.
So how did it start?
Well, there, and it wasn't long after that we heard of a dairy farm that was in the Barossa Valley, and they were getting rid of one of their calves. The male calves are wastage in the dairy industry. And this woman rang and said, I've got a calf if you want it. And that was Teddy. And Teddy and Lynn, that is on the Freedom Hill logo. So we took in Teddy. And then just after that, there was another calf that came in. And within a matter of weeks, we had 3 calves and Lynn there. And that's how it sort of went on. And then from then, it was awareness of people finding out that we were about. There was no other sanctuary in South Australia for farm. So once people start hearing there is a safe haven for them, I was getting calls left, right and centre from people to take in the orphan lambs or the cows from the dairy industry or the calves from the dairy industry. And it just grew and grew.
You're getting all these calls. Obviously, you only have 50 acres. How do you deal with turning people away?
You've just got the acres. You can take on everything. You get the calls and you think, yes, I can do that and I can take this. And it's when you sit back and you think, now I need to think about the long-term plans of this and how we're going to paddock these, how we're going to feed them. The cost of feeding the animals is huge. So there becomes a point where you have to say we don't take on people's unwanted pets because we get calls from people every week, more so when it's drought periods when they can't afford to feed their horses, or they've bought a pig that they think a miniature pig and then it grows too big and it digs up all their rose garden and they don't want it anymore. And I then have to say to them, I can't take on your unwanted pet. If it was your child, would you abandon it and leave it like this? And I have to get quite tough with it and be strong enough to do that. And in the beginning, it's extremely hard to do that, but you do have to do it. Otherwise, you haven't got the space for the rescue ones when you desperately need it for them to come in.
Now, how does that make you feel that you can't take every rescue?
In the beginning, I think it's heartbreaking that you can't, and it doesn't ever leave you that you don't feel heartbroken with it. But the way that I view it is that for the animals that I have been able to save, they become the voices for the ones that have lost their lives, and hopefully in the future, being the voice for the other animals, it will end. Probably not my lifetime for sure, but change in people's attitudes towards farmed animals and finding out about the atrocities in the industries is what's needed, and education is the only thing to get it out there with them. And then once people are aware of it, there is no turning back, I don't think.
How do you think is the best way to promote and educate and encourage compassionate, cruelty-free living?
Self, being able to, I suppose, not push people into your beliefs. People don't want to be told what to do. They only follow. If they see that you're eating a lovely meal, most people will opt for that meal. Like at Christmas time, if you're eating with the family and half the family have got their roast leg of lamb or beef or something as well, you'll see them say, oh, have you got a nut loaf there? Can I have a piece of that? Or, wow, I didn't know that you can have your roast veggies and still have your Christmas lunch the same as us without the cruelty. And people will follow and want to experiment, and they'll find that these foods are just as delicious. And once you've told them you can eat all this food without causing any harm, why wouldn't you do that? People are more open to accepting you, I think, as a vegan as well, rather than being the freak that it used to be years ago, being a tree-hugging hippie view to a vegan lifestyle.
That's what we all are, tree-hugging hippies. What do you feel is the reason that people have such a disconnect with where they get their food from?
Comes from just basically growing up with not being told the truth. I grew up, my mum was a great believer in eating meat and your 5 veggies, and she never expressed where it came from as a kid. And at 12 years old, I joined the Anti-Vivisection Union, and in those days it was $20 to join. And at that time, I felt there was something wrong with me because my desire to help animals was so strong and other people's weren't. But I think what happens is it's the family, you grow up with it, and if you had your children and you expose them to, rather than it's a ham sandwich, it's a pig in 2 pieces of bread. That's what you're eating. And children, if you put them in a cot, a baby in a cot with an apple and a rabbit, it's going to eat the apple before it ate the rabbit. It's just not natural for us to be eating and consuming meat.
Now, when you said you thought there might be something wrong with you, and it's in a joking way, but that's kind of the way a lot of vegan people feel, kind of on the outside. Did you run into any difficulties with your family as far as your eating habits?
I did, and I still do. My sister went vegetarian. I couldn't convince her to go on the vegan side of it. My mum, she went vegetarian and was vegetarian for 40 years. And my brother is still a believer that you have to have meat and won't go even look at the path of changing to a vegan or a vegetarian lifestyle. But I didn't get any flack for my beliefs. I was a very strong-minded person, so it really didn't worry me if I was made to feel by anybody that I was different. I thought, well, if this is what different is, I'm going to be different all of my life. And it's not until you actually meet other people who have the same mindset as you, the like-minded people, that you start talking to them and they're just like you, and you think, wow, I'm not this freak more. Well, just as much as me. And there's such a big community of people that are vegetarian and vegan, and with the internet, you know, you're only a tap away from somebody to ask them something. You've always got a friend there for you.
Is Australia a relatively vegan-friendly country?
Yes, I think it is. Probably not as much as America, but we have many, many more restaurants than we did when I first started out being a vegetarian and then going on to being a vegan. And that's probably why I started up an online store when I first went vegan, because there wasn't the places to find your vegan options of food. And if they were, they would be over an hour's drive to find a place. And a restaurant, they were not accepting of you having a different lifestyle and eating something different than having your meat. Even flying interstate travel, there was a lady, or an air hostess, said to me, we've run out of the vegan meals, but we have chicken parmigiana. And I said, like, no, I don't eat them. But it's chicken parmigiana. Like, everyone eats that. And I said, not as a vegan, you don't. And she said, but everyone loves it. So I said, no, I don't. So, you know, I think it's, definitely we've got a lot more restaurants. And in Adelaide itself, we're branching out. And there's not too many places that you would go to now without a vegan option for you to eat.
When and why did you transition to a plant-based diet? I mean, we've touched on it a little bit, but what was the real reason behind it?
I loved animals, and I felt the need to stop eating the animals that I loved. I saw them, all the farm animals, just the same as my pet dog. And I couldn't do it anymore and needed to do a change. And at 16, when I wanted to do it, was very much against it. And I ended up leaving home so that I could cook my own food and not have to have that piece of meat put in front of my face all the time. But it was the desire of loving the animals as much as my companion animals that made me do the change. And then as time and being able to research and find out more. It's probably the old thing that every vegetarian will say, if only I knew about the dairy industry, I would have been vegan many years before this, and that was the same for me as well. I'd been vegetarian for 26 years and then found out and researched and found out the horrors in the dairy industry, and then went vegan instantly. And at the time that I did, I was travelling overseas, and I found that extremely hard because I was in Switzerland and couldn't read any packaging. So, yeah, as a new vegan, you're continually searching ingredients of languages you couldn't speak. So I ate a lot of bread when I was over there. Bread and potatoes, I think, were my stable diet.
Now, you mentioned leaving home.
Mm-hmm.
What happened there? Did you leave home at 18 or did you leave home earlier?
At 16, yeah, I left home at 16. Was living sort of maybe 2 blocks away from where Mum was. So we were still, Mum and I were very close. But Mum didn't think eating a vegetarian diet was a healthy option and thought that I would fade away to nothing and get very sick from it. And so I said I need to have that breakaway so that I can eat and cook my own food and show you that I can live quite healthy on a vegetarian diet. And she did. She saw that later as time went on, that I was living, quite okay. And then she became vegetarian once I started to help her change her ways in her cooking and her thinking as well. And then she was vegetarian for 40 years. So we got there eventually.
That must have been very hard on you, though, at 16.
Yes, it was. Yeah, but my beliefs at the time was very strong. As I said, when I was 12 and I joined the Anti-Vivisection Union at high school, I wouldn't have anything to do with the mice dissections. It was hard to do it, but I'm so glad that I did do it because it helped Mum realise as well that being vegetarian, you can still be healthy. My mother was very much a mother of growing up in the mining town in Broken Hill, where everyone is meat eaters there. So it was their barbecues there. You wouldn't ever see any vegetables on a barbecue up in Broken Hill. You would only see it full of meat. So she came from a very big meat-eating family.
Did you have any issues with your friends at that time, at 16?
Yes, for sure. My friends thought I was weird. I was the only one, I would have said at the time in fourth year of high school, year 11, that I was the only one that was a vegetarian at the time. Teased a lot for wanting to change my lifestyle and eating. And it was difficult when we would go out. If we went to the pictures or things like that, I just wouldn't eat when we go out there. So, one, I wouldn't do it because I couldn't afford to do it anyway, but I didn't want people noticing that I was eating anything different than them. Therefore, they would say, oh, what do you think you're doing that for? So it's a lot easier just to not eat around friends for a long, long time, probably until I was in my 20s before I had accepting friends for my lifestyle.
What did you learn from that struggle, and how did you overcome it?
I think what I learnt from it was that people will do their own thing in their own time, and you can't force them to do it, but don't change yourself for it. Be who you are and what you believe in, and eventually people will accept you for what you're doing. And even if it is something entirely different than their views, there's a common respect for each other. It's the same as our vets at the moment. They're farmers, but they accept that we have a sanctuary that look after the animals that they're killing. And they will look after our animals and give us the best medical care we can have. And I have a respect for them because that is their lifestyle and that's something their father has done and their father's done. And I've said they can still change and it would be great if they opened their mind to changing. But it's a common respect, I think, amongst your friends and family and community.
You mentioned that you were vegetarian for 26 years. Was there anything that was holding you back from becoming vegan besides just not knowing about the dairy industry?
Nothing at all. Once I'd researched it and found out about it, I changed straight away. I didn't say, oh, I like my cheese too much to give it up, or I like having cow's milk in my tea or coffee or anything like that. It was basically I just didn't know how the industry ran and continued on consuming dairy products just because of the lack of knowledge. But once I'd found it, there was no turning back for me. It's a disgusting industry and it needs to stop as far as I'm concerned.
I couldn't agree more. The more you know, it's amazing. I was having a discussion with my 14-year-old daughter just yesterday about it, and it was, and she's aware of it. We were just talking about how cheese was made, and she was so affected that she was crying, and she already knows about it.
Yeah, I think once you know, you can't go back on it. It would be wrong in your mind to do something like that. And if you do it, then you're going vegan for the wrong reasons, if you can swap and change like that.
No, I agree because it's really living with your values, right? Isn't that what we're really getting at?
Yeah, for sure. It's your lifestyle, your values. It's something that you strongly believe in, and there is no comeback from it.
Where did you get the courage to start Freedom Hill?
I don't think it's the courage so much. It was the seeing the faces of the animals that would come in that had been orphaned or abandoned and watching them grow that I felt I had to continue with it. Yeah, there was no courageous. It is basically the happiness of the animals that you get in and that they survive with you. There is the ones that you lose, and that's something that you forget the losses of the ones that you've had. And we had a lamb early in the piece, and he was like, you'd call him a boy in a bubble. Every time we took him outside, he would get an infection, and we'd have to bring him in and fight that infection with him and sit up all night. He'd be struggling to breathe and things like that, and he would be on antibiotics and anti-inflammatories. And for 5 months I did that, and after 5 months he could go outside, and he was past that infectious stage where he's picking up everything. And he grew to 14 months old, and he was a healthy boy, beautiful boy, and he got bitten by a red belly black snake, and it killed him. And at the time, I fell into the depths of, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to see another loss of any other animal, because I'd fought so hard for his life, only for a freak accident to happen like that. I didn't think that I could do it. But my husband said, go outside and look at the other animals' eyes, and you tell them that you aren't to continue doing this for the others. And that's what pulled me through it, was going out there and sitting with the others and saying, well, you've all struggled. Every single animal that come here has had a different story, and they've all struggled at the beginning of their lives of, in some form or another, have been closer to death than the others. And some I've fought incredibly hard to give them that life, and they fought with me. We've got a sheep that's here now called Buddy, and he's just over 12 months old. And in the beginning, the vets told me that he was going to die. His head had been ripped open by a fox, and he was on death's door. And I spent 2 weeks laying on the lounge in a fold-out bed with him, just watching him, feeding bottles whenever he wanted them. He was with me 24/7, and that little guy fought as much as I was fighting for his life, and we both fought for his survival. And here he is, you know, as proud as Punch out in the paddock, happy as anything. And, you know, they are incredibly strong. They fight just as much as any human would fight for their life.
So red belly black snake, what is that? Is that a common snake in Australia? I know about the king brown.
Yeah, and the red belly black snakes are as well. And it's normally wouldn't bite a sheep, but in the beginning I was putting bedding hay down in the shelter areas where the sheep would sleep. And it was summertime, and I think that the snake on between the hay, and he had come in and sat down on it, and it had bitten him then. So that then changed my whole pattern with things. Now they don't get bedding hay in summer. They'll sleep on the grass and no bedding hay, but in winter they get it. So I blame myself for his death, because had I not put that hay down, he probably would have still been alive, because it was a freak accident. They don't normally bite sheep. So,
But how would you know? Without this, and granted, it's a terrible tragedy. Without the tragedy, how would you ever know that was not the right thing to do?
Yeah, exactly. It was a lesson that I learnt from. But I suppose in hearing people talk about that the snakes don't bite sheep, you think that it's not going to happen, same as cows, but cows can get bitten going down to the water, and the snake is at the same water hole, and it will strike its nose, and they'll take them out as well. They'll kill them. And in the property that we had with, you know, more acreage, the more expanse of land there is, so then there's more chances of definitely having snakes around. I always said if I ever saw a snake, I'd sell up and move back down to the city, but I've seen a lot of snakes, and you just can't do that. So, and snakes won't attack you if they don't feel you're a threat to them. If you just stand, they'll walk straight through your legs and continue on their path, and that's what you let them do. So,
up here in New England, there's a lot of non-poisonous snakes, but yeah. I can't even imagine running into one of those.
I think probably the fear factor, if you know the brown snakes get you, you're unless you can remain calm, and that's something that I don't think that I could personally do. If one bites me, I'm going to go, oh my God, I'm going to die, and go into a panic, and then the blood starts rushing through you quicker. But the idea is to remain calm and call in. Probably here where we are, I wouldn't be able to drive to hospital in time. If I did remain calm enough to drive there, I have to be incredibly calm with it and put a restrictive bandage on where it's, you know, bitten you. I don't think that I would be able to do that. So you'd have to call in the choppers, and they would have to airlift you out. So I've always thought if one does bite me, I've always got my phone with me. I would lay down and call for help and try to remain calm as much as I could.
That's kind of like a vegan quandary right there, right? You're sitting there and here's this snake who you wish the best for, but he bites you. And you're like, oh, wait. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and they're quite, like we had one at the old property when we're in Woodside, and the brown snake was on our roof, and I walked past the kitchen window And here he was, over the gutter at me, and you could hear the rustling over him on a tin roof, and it was this horrible down back, like it's just this cold feeling through your body when you hear this snake, and you think this thing could kill me. And we called in the snake catcher guy, and he just hooks it up with his hook on the roof and flung it onto the ground. And as he did, I'm screaming and running as fast as I can. And he's got the hook on the snake's sort of head, holding it there. And I'm, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, at him. And so I wasn't calm at all. And he's sort of saying, Kym, just calm down. I've got the snake. And I go, oh my God, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? But he bagged it up, and then they go and release it into a place where it's hopefully going to stay away from, anything in the house. So that's the best vegan option I can have, is they catch it, bag it, and put it somewhere else. And then it apparently gives you, the snake catcher guy said to us, it gives us about 2 weeks before the next one finds the snake is gone, and then they move in on that territory. So for 2 weeks, we don't really look for snakes, so it's nice.
I think I would probably be the same as you. I'd be like, oh my God. Those things can kill you. And how fast do those things kill you?
Oh, I think I'm not 100% sure on it, but I think you've got about a half an hour before it starts to kick in. So, we're probably about 3/4 of an hour from the hospital here. And, so that's where I know that I would have to remain calm and not do the, oh, my God, and run around like a banshee.
That's got to be tough. Now, what is one thing that's exciting you right now about Freedom Hill Sanctuary?
Freedom Hill is tremendous at the moment, with people becoming more aware that there is a sanctuary for farmed animals and wanting to be a part of it, and be a part of a community of people that are caring. So I think the overall growth of a vegan community is exciting for me, and it's only going to increase as it goes on, and the education at Freedom Hill is what's going to do it with, or help to do it anyway. So that's what excites me at the moment.
And you have farm stays, is that correct?
Yes, because I only just recently moved over to this property. We haven't got like a tiny house or anything like that for people to stay in. So we've set up a caravan where people can come and stay for a weekend, and they can relax and just meander with the animals and hang with them all day, or they can help me prepare their food and do their feeds, and be a part of picking up the poo and doing all the things, the fun things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. They can come and do that as well, or just sit back and relax and be around the animals.
And how do people reserve that caravan?
Online on the web, they put in an inquiry for the date and see if it's available. I haven't set up a calendar, a booking system yet, so they just email me with whatever weekend that they think they might be free, and I say that's free, or the following weekend's free, and we work out a time, and then they can come up. And the only restrictions of that is when COVID, when we have a complete lockdown. We've only had 2 in South Australia where they've locked us down, and that would be the only restriction, is a COVID lockdown, that we wouldn't be able to have somebody come up on the weekend and stay.
Now, speaking of shelter, I would like to talk about the hashtag Shelter for Sheep. Can you give us an overview of that situation?
Yes. What we're doing at the moment is we're campaigning because of us just going through winter, and we've had 17 orphan lambs come in. Some of them, one of them that I had was frozen when she came in. The temperature, she had no temperature recording when I got her, and she's pulled through. But our push in the next week, and has been, is we're trying to get the government to change. We have a party, the Animal Justice Party in Australia, and we need these guys in government so that we can campaign for the rights for farm animals. And one of the issues at the moment is shelter for the sheep. So we're doing hashtag shelter for sheep, and our campaign is trying to pass a law that all farmers are required by law to have some form of shelter for their sheep when they're lambing. Our sheep have got shelter here, so they've got a huge shed they go in summer when it's hot, and in winter they go in it out of the rain and the cold as well. And we think it should be made mandatory that all farmers have that for their sheep because of the loss. It's 10 to 15 million lambs are lost every year through the winter perils in Australia. So it's a huge amount that could be stopped with one or more things, and our one is shelter for them.
Now, what is one habit or hack or tip that helps you stay on track with your plant-based diet?
Well, it's easy for me because I'm surrounded by animals that I love and they love me and that have a life that they would never have had here. So it's easy for me to walk out in a paddock and see them, and I would never ever change because of it.
Now, is there a cookbook or book that you've gifted to someone who's transitioning to a plant-based diet?
Probably, yeah, gifted a lot of vegan books. And I think with me, I definitely, I love buying vegan cookbooks. I think they're amazing. I go through them like a Woman's Weekly sort of thing. They're amazing to read and look at the new recipes you can have. But at the moment, I think my favourite one is just it's a 6-ingredient or less vegan book. Because I'm so time short with what I'm doing here, I want something quick and easy and tasty. So that's my favourite at the moment but, next week it could be something different if I've got a bit more time on my hands. So.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
Before, I would say hazed in a, hazy state. And now my word would probably be alive.
Okay, so hazed and alive, kind of like foggy.
Yeah. Before I was vegan, your head doesn't feel as clear. Becoming vegan, I became so much clearer and so much more alive.
Is that one of the positive changes that you noticed after becoming vegan?
Yes, I think with myself, I felt that I was in that haze and I would wake up not as clear thinking. And once I became vegan, I would wake up feeling alive and my head was clear. I was able to think a lot clearer. I had a better vision of what I wanted to do with my life, how I was going to run the business when I started up the online business. I basically needed sleep because also I think when you go vegetarian and vegan, if you have meat trying to digest through your body is just taking the nutrition from what you've eaten. So therefore you're waking up feeling awake and not tired because your body is just taking all this nutrition from this beautiful food and you're waking up thinking, yep, let's start today. So, yeah, I think it was really the clouded vision in the beginnings. It seems such a long time ago. I've lived such a long time now without having that clouded vision there. But, yeah, definitely more alive.
Such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Now, what's the best way for people to find you on Instagram, the web, or social media?
It would be our website, www.freedomhill.com.au, or otherwise we're on Facebook under Freedom Hill Sanctuary or Instagram. So, yes, we're always changing things on Instagram and everybody can see all the beautiful photos of the animals. So please join us.
Thank you so much for being on Plant Your Seed.
Oh, thank you so much, Fred. It's much appreciated. It's been lovely talking to you.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.